For the last few years, I've avoided this topic. And the reason why I've avoided this topic is because I think it is a hard topic to talk about from a platform, because the propensity and the way in which it often gets expounded beyond what I'm actually trying to say and what we are trying to say. So tonight, we are going to do something a little different. We're going to try to get real practical for a few minutes here, and we are going to talk about college. And I just want to give you some caveats that I need to get out of the way right away, which is there is no one-size-fits-all. What I do is not what you should do for your kids. It might be. It probably isn't. Everybody's going to have a different scenario, a different kid, a different set of circumstances that you need to apply to your situation. I don't want to have you assume at the outset of this that this is a message to try to convince you to go to CBI. I would love for you to go to CBI. That's not what the point of this is. I'm not trying to disparage any particular school here, nor am I trying to encourage any particular school here. I want to try to do a broad enough overview here because I want you to think about this topic. So let me just phrase it this way. I do not believe that we spend enough time thinking in advance as parents for this massive decision that our kids have to go through. And what I want to propose to you is that we need to spend some time considering this as parents. We often think that a school choice, a college choice, is our kids' choice. We know that that's partly true, but I think that there's a lot of pre-work to be done in this conversation, and I want to get your head wrapped around some things, some points to consider. I know if you're sitting in this room, it's possible that you have a kid that's already in college, and this is already like, they're already there. I know it's possible that you've got a junior higher who is far enough away from college that you don't feel like this is relevant, but I do think that the majority of our people are thinking about that in this room to some degree or another. So if you've got someone who's already there, use your wisdom of you going through the process to help in your group tonight, to have conversation. And if you're still far enough away, I think it's never too soon to start to think and get your head wrapped around this, because this isn't some small little thing. I think most of the time what's going on is people are thinking about choosing a college like they choose buying a car. They say, how much does it cost? Does it have the features that I want? And does it look the way that I want it to? I think that's the way that a lot of people end up choosing a college for their kids, and I just want to say that if that's the way that you tend to think about it, I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think that this is something that is going to be forming and informing our children. It is going to have a formative experience in their life, and it is a shaping, molding, mind-conforming thing that's going on. This isn't just about you getting in, turning on the keys, and going 4 years down the road. No, this has massive impacts in someone's life. And so I do think it takes, it's important for us to take the time to consider some things around it. So I want to do that with you here tonight. I have some additional things for you afterwards that I'm going to give to you to just spend some time thinking. And this is not per se a sermon as much of it is just think with me for a minute. I'm going to try to reason out loud with you. And I really have one verse, and that's all I want to cover. But I just want you to think with this for a minute, okay? So I want to give you 4 considerations, and I want you to write the first consideration down with me here. Consideration number 1 when it comes to college. I want you to consider the desired outcomes. Now I'm talking about you sitting down and thinking about your child and thinking, what is it that I want my kid to get out of college? What are my goals? When my kid leaves this institution, this place, whatever it is I'm deciding for my child, he, she, to do, what do I want to be the outcomes, the goals? What are my objectives here? What are my desired outcomes for my kid? Now, I think there's a lot of these that you should consider. I'm going to give you some. This is not an exhaustive list, but I think these are the most prominent ones, and I want you to think about each of these, and I want to propose something for you to do, okay? So here's some desired outcomes that you can have. You can say, I want my kid to get an education, okay? This is talking about the knowledge and growth that happens in the mind, the formative pieces of learning information and growing to be more wise, right? That is supposed to be the point of some of this, right? To get an education, that's the point of going to college. It's become less of the point, I think, over the years to grow in knowledge, but it could be that the outcome is, okay, I want my kid to get a good, solid education to be prepared for the field that they're going to do, blah, blah, blah. General speaking, specifically for a career, whatever it may be. Maybe one of your desires for your kid is I just want them to have a degree. I know that that degree will open up doors for them. I know that degree is good for them to have in their back pocket, just in case. I think it would be good for them to get a degree. I don't care what they get a degree in. I just want them to get a degree, right? That's often the way people think and talk about college. Education's not bad. Getting a degree is not bad. These are just things that people are thinking about here. A big one is, okay, the whole point of going to college is for my kid to get equipped with general knowledge and specific knowledge towards a career impact, okay? So I want to have them in some sort of career. I want them to have a good financial life. I want them to make good, wise decisions in business and life. And I think that that's going to be the goal of college is if I send them to college, they're going to know what they want to do for a job and they're going to do it well and they're going to be prepared to do it, right? That's an idea. You might be thinking, maybe not the most prominent one, but I know my kid loves sports. They love sports. We as a family love sports. And so I want my kid to be able to participate in collegiate sports. I want them to go to school where they've got a good sports team and where they play or where they can participate. We're a big football family and we like to tailgate and we want to go to the games. And so I want them to go to this university because I want to play sports. That is, for many people, a lot of people across the country, a desired outcome. They say, I want my kid to be engaged in sports, to be to school with sports. Another one would be to say, I know it takes a lot of work to go through college. It's at least 4 years if you're going through college. And so to complete that is going to develop something in my kid about working hard and managing their time and being a productive person. They're going to learn work ethic when they do this. And so this is a good positive thing. And I think you can see in all these things, this is all potentially true for you. One that I think probably is at the top of a lot of people's lists, if not yours in this room, maybe your kids, is the experience thing. I want my kids to go to college to have some form of college experience. Now, when you say college experience, I think what most people conjure up in their minds is the traditional, typical, worldly, ungodly college experience that you would refer to with the partying and the drinking and the sexual immorality that goes on and all the activities of being in a fraternity or sorority or whatever you're going to do. But I think even as Christians, we tend to think, okay, well, I want my kid to go to a school that has this many amount of kids because I want them to have a good college experience. I want my kid to go to this school because it's got good facilities. I want my kid to have an experience where they're going to connect with certain types of people. They're going to have an experience. Or maybe you liken it to something that you had when you were in college, and your motivation, your desired outcome for them is just to have a good time, to have fun, to enjoy themselves, to be able to be a college student for a period of their life, and just not to worry about stuff and just have a good time. That's oftentimes how it goes, and it could just be positive too. It could be I want them to be in a good, positive environment, surrounded with good, positive influences, and I want them to have that experience. Maybe you just want them to grow up. You need them to mature, get off the video game console, and get in a book. Maybe there's a long list of things you want them to mature in, and maturity is something that can happen while they're in college. Maybe you want them to build good friendships, to have fun with their friends, to enjoy their time with their friends. Maybe you want them to find a spouse, which I think is a great goal to send your kid to college for, personally. Go get married. But, ring by spring, that's the goal. Don't tell me you don't care about that, all right? You do. All right, so that's an experience. And then, of course, as a last option, we're talking about their faith, their spiritual maturity, their maintaining of their faith, their Christian convictions being intact when they're over. Now, every single thing that I listed here, and I'm sure we could sit for a minute, and if you were to think with me, and I would say, shout out other goals you have for your kids, you can come up with a list. Maybe you can come up with 20 things. Here's what I want for my kid. I want them to be better at this, learn this, grow in this area, learn the hard work, be involved in here, in a team, and blah, 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 all these things. What I think is a problem in Christian thinking about college is that we don't do well at prioritizing these things very well. What we do is we kind of lump them all into a big pile and we say, okay, well, yeah, that stuff. Instead of really thinking about each one of these and saying, what's the ultimate goal? What's the priority when I'm considering the outcomes of this? And which one's rising to the top for me in my decision-making process? And which one should be rising to the top in my decision-making process? Okay? So I think if you were to do a self-examination, which I'm going to ask you to do, I got a piece of paper for you to write out some of your goals and objectives and for you to rank them, to do a self-examination process. What is it that I want my kid to get out of going to college? What do I want them to get? To think in your own mind, when I talk about it, when we go to schools, when we're having discussions, me and my spouse, and we're talking about where we want our kid to school, what's always the thing that comes up? What's the thing that I'm always mentioning, and what's on the top of my list? Right? That's going to reveal maybe what your ultimate desired outcome is, and I want to say, whatever that is, even if it's good, education, I want them to get a good job, I want them to meet a spouse, all good things. They all need to be subsequent to the main thing. And the main thing that I think we as Christian parents need to recognize is just this one verse, which is the only verse that I have here. And it's very important for us to keep this at the top of our mind when we are thinking about all of this stuff. For what does it profit if a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Almost everything on that list has some sort of worldly connection. I want them to get a spouse. I want them to get a job. I want them to be smart according to this world. I want them to have all of these experiences. That's all stuff that kind of is centered around the here and now. The here and now of how they're going to succeed and survive in this world. And that's what college has been formed in the worldly thinking to be. As Christians, I want to just tell you what I think your goal, your primary goal should be for your kid to go to college. If there's any sort of consideration you have of what should rise to the top, it should be this. Wherever your kid goes, whenever they go, whatever the context is they're in, your goal in helping them make this decision is for them to leave whatever institution they go with their faith intact and maintaining a love for God. That is the goal. If they don't go into it with a faith, the goal is for them hopefully to come out of it with a faith that is intact and a love for God that is growing. As Christians, thinking about sending our kids to college, we shouldn't care about anything else above this. And what ends up happening when we think about college is we say, okay, what's the point of college? The point of college is I want my kid to get a good job. And we say, okay, what's the best school for the career that they want so they can make the most amount of money? And then we say, okay, well, we're going to send them there. And the consideration of, is that school going to be a place that rips and pulls the faith out of my kid? Is that career path going to be a career path that is dominated by anti-Christian thinking, that is going to perpetuate in their own minds something that is false and untrue, and my kid is going to be drawn into rejection of the truth? We have to start first with that question when we talk about our outcomes of, what do I want for my kid? I want my kid to leave whatever school they're in with their faith intact. Now, you can do that in a variety of different schools and in a variety of different things, but it has to be your priority. Your primary thought is how do I get this to be accomplished? You don't know everything. You don't know how it's all going to work out, but you can assume, just like you would in any sort of situation where safety is a concern, well, where is it going to be more safe, right? You're going to always have to take some risk, but where is it going to be a little bit safer and where's going to be a really dangerous place to be? You can make that assessment. So if you were to go back through and look through this list, and what I'm going to ask you to do after is to go through and make a bunch of priorities, I think all of us as Christian parents need to say, okay, what are my desired outcomes first and foremost? I need to make sure that my kid, in gaining things in this world, in gaining experience and maturity and friendships and maybe a spouse and a career trajectory and a piece of paper that says you have a degree and an education where you learn things and you become a hard worker, all these things that you can come up with, that the main thing for me as a Christian parent is that my kids leave with their faith intact. That's got to be the goal. Don't want them to gain the whole world and then forfeit their soul. Second thing is this. Once you have that priority in place, and you've said in your own mind, and you've sat with your spouse, and you've talked about this and say, this has got to be our main goal. This is our main goal. It's not enough to just then leap from that consideration of saying, okay, how do I think about this rightly? Okay, kids got to make sure they maintain their faith. There's lots of ways we can go about that. Then now let's consider schools. No, I don't want you to consider schools because I want you to consider your unique child. Because you can't just assume that your kid, given a certain set of circumstances, is going to have their faith maintained. Say they go to a good church, but they're in some crazy school and some crazy degree program that's going to push things that are untrue in them constantly, right? You're not going to send your kid to school to do gender studies at some crazy place that is anti-God and has the biggest Satanist club in the country, right? You're just not going to do it. So you can't just assume these things. So the thing is, okay, I have a kid. My kid is a unique person. Now let me think about my kid. So let me give you some things to think about for your kid. And I've got a big, long list of questions for you, too. First thing you need to consider is my kid a Christian? Have they professed Christ? Because this is an important factor in this conversation. If you want them to maintain faith, well, the first question, of course, here is, well, do they have faith? Have they professed faith in Christ, and is that a genuine faith? And you should be able to, at least at this phase of your parenting, that should be a goal of yours to be constantly pushing towards this end. Do you trust Christ? Have you repented? Have you placed your faith in him? Is it genuine? Has it been tested? Can you solidify that? And if it's not, then you still need to consider as a parent, now they might pull away from you and say, I'm going to go here, I don't care about you, I'm going to pay for it, whatever. I get that. That's a possibility. But you have an impact, especially if you're paying for it, to say, hey, I think these are the better schools for you to go, knowing that circumstance. Okay? I know kids that have gone into all Christian schools that were not believers and came out believers, and I know kids that were believers that went into all Christian schools who came out unbelievers. So I know that all anecdotes here it's not a universal application. But for you to think about this, you need to first ask yourself the question, is my kid a Christian or are they not a Christian? Now, once you ask that question, there's a lot of other questions that you should be asking. You should be asking questions like, has my child's faith ever been tested? Is it proven? Right? Or something like this, do they have any strength in their convictions as a Christian? Right? They might go to True North, they might say they're a Christian, but do they actually have convictions? Do they stand firm on these principles? If their convictions have never been tested, you kind of want to know that. Because if you send them to a school where they're going to be tested regularly and they've never been tested, you don't know how they're going to fare. Has your kid ever had their convictions tested? Have they ever been tried? Have they ever been put under the test and they've come out the other side and said, yes, they've sought the word of God, they've sought to validate it and prove it against the skeptics and the false teachers and those that are wanting to disprove it. Have they done that? Are they even at a young age able to do that? Do they have some sort of strength and conviction, strength in their convictions? Every single parent needs to assess their actual kids' abilities and strengths when it comes to college. You have to say, okay, is my kid going to be the type of kid that is going to be apt for an academically rigorous program, an academically rigorous school? Sure, maybe they get in on some sort of sports scholarship, but can they handle this? Is this good for them? Is the pressure of even the academics, knowing my kid, going to push them to the point where it causes them to break, and we then see a crumbling of them connecting with church, connecting with the things of God, not reading their Bible, not being connected, and driving away from God? What's the priority, right? We have to think about it that way. What are they good at? What are they not good at, right? In the same token, of course, you want to know, what are they prone to be good at? What are they prone to be bad at? What are their proclivities? What are the things that they tend to lean towards? What are their weaknesses? A lot of our kids are bad at math, and it's like, well, then don't go be an engineer, okay? That's not what we want. And if they have some specific weaknesses, that you need to assess their options based off of your kid. You just need to know them. You need to know them. And then you need to know their personality. You need to know these things, okay? Now, these are very general. I've written down like 10 questions for you to think through with you and your spouse about your kid and some specifics. What are their sin proclivities? What are the things that tempt them? I mean, if you've got a young teenage boy who has struggled with pornography already and you're thinking, I'm going to send him to this party school in San Diego, maybe you should think about that a little bit, right? We're a place where it's really warm and people don't wear a lot of clothes and it's known to be a party school. Like, let's just think about it, right? Am I saying that's the wrong choice? I'm not saying that's the wrong choice. I'm saying you need to know your kids. You need to know what their struggles are. You need to know where they're at in this process. Right? There's going to be lots of different considerations given your specific kid. All right. Once you've got your goals in place and you say, okay, here's my list. First things first, and then I'm going to order everything else underneath that. And you're saying, okay, now I got a sense. We've talked about our kid. I know who my kid is. Kid's going to change a little bit. I get that, but I kind of know my kid. Then before you even say, okay, what are my school options? Here's something I want to throw in your face, okay? I want to say, consider different timing. Your kid does not have to go to school the second they graduate high school, right? They don't have to go to school the next year. So I just want you to consider this at least, that maybe right after high school is the right choice, because that's what most people do, but maybe it's not the right choice. Maybe taking a year off is the right choice, and during that year, you come up with a plan for them to grow in areas where they're weak or where they struggle or where they're underprepared, and you say, okay, what we're going to do during that year's off is we're going to get you some different jobs, and we're going to send you out to work, and we're going to put you in a field where you can observe the thing that you're wanting to go to school for. Let's maybe consider that first before we lock ourselves into this school. Maybe you consider some gap year programs that exist in Bible colleges or in different schools, or things even happen over the summer to train a biblical worldview in your kids' lives. Take some time off and just not worry about jumping in right away. Or maybe you're saying, okay, actually, I'm going to encourage my kid to not just jump in right away. Maybe they're going to learn a skill. Maybe they're going to learn my skill. Maybe they're going to go to cosmetology school and learn that first so they got something to even fall back on before they go. I think one of the things that causes so much pressure on us as parents when it comes to this college, it's like, it's got to be done right now. Like, we've got to decide our kid has to go. And one of the reasons for that, and I will never forget this, and I know how kids feel. I remember sitting in my senior chapel and having all my friends' names read off and where they're going to go to school. And it was like, my buddy Johnny, he's going to, San Bernardino, State University or whatever it's called. This one gal, the smart gal, she's going to Harvard. This person's going here, and it comes to they don't even read my name because I didn't even tell them what school I was going to because I didn't know which community college I was going to yet, okay? And I remember feeling that sense of like shame, like all my friends are better than me. They're smarter than me because they got into a school, and I don't even know where I'm going yet. I look back at that now, and I think, how silly of a thought that is. What is the difference between me taking a year and going to community college and figuring some things out and still finishing my degree and then going on to get more degrees and having a job and living your life? What's the difference? The pressure that our kids feel to immediately make a decision, decide on their degree, and jump in, I just say be released from that pressure. And you can give your kids some direction in this. You don't have to do this. If you're not sure, you can wait a little bit. You can wait 6 months, go halfway through the next semester. Wait a year, do something else in between that's going to help you decide what you want to do, where you want to go, how this is going to work. These are all things that I think we don't consider enough, and we probably should consider the timing of this before we consider schools. So you consider your goals, you think about your kids, and then you think, okay, is this the right time for them? Do they need some time? Do they need to take a break and do some work? And then if it is time and you're saying, okay, we really got to think about schools, we've made this decision, my kid is going to go to some form of school or whatever, what are our options, okay? So then we need to consider the school options. Just wanting to wrap your head around all the thinking about this, because I want you guys to actually spend some time thinking about this on your own and then with your kids. But school options, what are our school options? Option number 1, no college. It is okay if your kid doesn't go to college. It's okay if your kid goes out, gets a really good job. Maybe it's not even a really good job at first, but they get a job and they keep working and they work their way up and they do a great job in that company and they live their life that way. It's okay if your kid says, I want to start a family and get married, and I'm going to get married to this guy and he's got a job and I'm going to do this. Okay? It's an option, you guys. It's not everybody has to fit into the box of we're going to go to school, so that's an option. Not everybody has to go. Not everybody is really apt for college. Not everybody should go to college. Not everybody who goes to college has a great outcome from going to college, right? You need to know that. Like, we have this idea in our mind that everybody that goes to college and gets this degree, gets a good job, and makes money and they have a happier life. We know that not to be true in just as many circumstances, right? They go to college, they get a degree in something that they hate, they work for a few years in it, then they have to start all over, and they just wish they would have never have gone, okay? We know that it can happen in either way, and so it should be something that we consider and say, is this even right for you? Should you even do this? Before then we jump to the college thing, we should be thinking, okay, if it's not college, if they're not going to go to college, what else can they do? Should they think about a trade, some sort of skill set that they can learn? I mean, we tend to get, again, locked into our box thinking to say people who have degrees from these four-year institutions make more money and are more successful, but you all probably have someone living on your street that has a nicer house than you that never went to college. because they became an entrepreneur and made a business and did great, right? And they didn't go to college. Maybe they come up with a trade, maybe they become an entrepreneur, maybe they learn business from someone else. Those are all options. The other option that I think in particular is more of a thing that is not considered in South Orange County is community college. We're like, okay, we can send our kids to a four-year institution, we'll figure it out, we'll take care of the bill. A lot of people might even overlook this. A community college, especially for a kid that doesn't know exactly what they want to do, is an amazing choice for many people. Even though it's not a Christian school, even though it's not going to be teaching faith, you can keep them home, you can keep them in church, you can keep them engaged with their community, and you can send them to something like this. This is an option that people should consider. Bible college, which is different from what I would consider a Christian college. A Bible college is like what CBI is, which is a place that is not designed for your kid to get a degree in some field that they can use in the workplace. It is designed for them to grow in their knowledge of God and grow spiritually. That's the point of what Bible college has been, to equip them to do the work of ministry, which every Christian is called to do, to be equipped to do. So Bible college, which of course we have one, and we are promoting that, but Bible college should be something that you can consider. Good thing about CBI, if you were to consider CBI stuff does transfer to so many schools that are traditional schools, so it's not wasted units like some Bible colleges are. Even though we're not accredited, we transfer our units to accredited schools, get dual credit. And then you get to the point of talking about four-year colleges, okay? Four-year colleges. And there's some breakdown here because there needs to be some breakdown. When you're considering the traditional four-year college university system, I think you need to make sure you're thinking about these categories as well. There is the all-Christian school, the Christian school, and the non-Christian school. Okay, and not everybody thinks about this real clearly, especially those first two distinctions. The all-Christian school is a school where part of the requirements to get in is that you have a profession of faith and a testimony, and so everybody on the student body, including the faculty and the staff, are professing believers, all Christian schools. There's not as many of these anymore as there used to be. Masters University is an all-Christian school. Biola University is an all-Christian school. Biola University is the fifth largest all-Christian school in the country. That is distinct from a Christian school, which has Christian doctrine at their core, Christian classes, maybe a Christian minor, but you don't have to be a Christian to go there. California Baptist University is a Christian school, but is not an all-Christian school. There are unbelievers that go there, and there are people of different faiths that go there, and Christians that go there. Are there chapels? Yes. Do they have to take Bible classes? Yes. But it's a Christian school, and that is true for Liberty University, that's true for Grand Canyon University, for Christian schools. There's a difference between an all-Christian school and a Christian school, and they have their pluses and their minuses, right? There's things to consider. And then, of course, everything else I would just lump in non-Christian schools, which, of course, there's lots of categories underneath that as well, but thinking that there is no Christian foundation, there is no biblical foundation, there's no Bible classes that are going to be required for them to take. Those are your options here. Now, why I'm bringing all this up and saying this is just the big picture stuff for us to consider. I think that your kids need your help. I think that they desperately, desperately need your help to make the wise decision in their life. And like I said about buying a car, I think this is how kids work. I worked at a university. And let me tell you, not to throw Pastor Mark under the bus at all, but when we would do a preview day, you know what we would emphasize on the preview day? We would emphasize the food in the cafeteria, how pretty the campus was, the dorm experience, how many friends you could make, and how much fun you would have. That's what you do at a university, right? This was at an all-Christian university that I worked at. The thing that they emphasized, it seemed to be the most appealing thing for the students coming in, was all the experience stuff. And do you know how many kids I would hear all the time say, you know what, I like this school, but I just really like Point Loma's campus because it's closer to the ocean. Or you know what, I really like the buildings, the newer buildings, and the new music building at CBU is so much better. Okay? Our kids need our help to be discerning to make these decisions based off of the priorities that they should have that they might not have. Your kid might put themselves into a college situation that is horrible for them and that you know is going to be bad for them because you know them. And you know that they're going to struggle with some things there and that they're going to be tempted and pulled in that situation. In that case, that you have the responsibility as a parent to say, let me help, let's guide, and let's direct. But you need to be aware of some of these big categories and get it wrapped in your mind. Okay, what are my options? This is all I'm trying to get you to think of. What are your options, right? First thing, goals, priority. Then let's think about your kid. Then let's think about our options. Is it time to do it? And what are my options in terms of where I go? Now, this is clearly not an exhaustive look at this topic because once we get to this phase, I could think about 50 more points that we need to cover about how we make decisions about schools, which is probably what you guys want out of this message, but I'm not giving it to you. But I think here is where we start. And we start this prayerfully with our spouse, and we go through these questions, and we say, where are we at here? Are we on the same page? And then we start walking our kid through this decision-making process so that as they are in the process with you of making this decision for college, they're doing it informed. You're trying to get them to think, yeah, but the point of you going to college is what? What's the point? What are you trying to gain? What's the goal? Get them thinking this way. You need to be thinking this way to get them thinking this way. They might just be looking so narrowly focused at, I want to play this sport at this school. Great, that's fantastic, but we got to go bigger than that as believers. We got to say, can my kid do that and still meet these other things that are important, maybe more important on your priority list for your kids, and hopefully on their priority list. If they can, then maybe that's a good fit. If they can't, let's just move on, because our goal needs to be making sure that their faith remains intact throughout this entire process. I don't want your small groups to be a rant sesh about how bad schools are doing and how dare anybody send their kid to this school, okay? That's not what I want. I don't want it to be, well, my anecdote trumps your anecdote, right? I know someone that went here and they had this experience, and, well, I knew someone that went here and had the opposite experience. That's not the point of this. This is for you to think about some of these considerations and say, really, where are your priorities at? That's really the thrust of our small group time. But in addition to that, I have a 2-page sheet of questions that I printed out for you that's on the back table that I want you to take for every single one of you and do on your own time to think about each of these things in more detail. It's got some charts on it. You can plot some points on it, just for you to get your mind wrapped around it. And then you could even use this as a framework to sit down with your kid and say, hey, let's talk about some of, what are your goals? You know, what is it you are thinking for college? What are some of your goals? What are your outcomes? I want this to just be a tool for you to get your minds wrapped around it as you start to consider these things. So as you go to your group, and as you discuss some of these things, and as you anticipate even working on this, and you can look at this in your group as well if you feel like this will be helpful for you, I really want you guys to take this seriously, because we are in a culture war. We're in a crisis mode, it seems like right now, and the stats are not in our favor. The next generation is not, statistically speaking, apt to succeed well and continue with the faith with the current trajectory. It's not looking great. We have the responsibility before God, the stewardship before God, to say, I'm going to at least do my part. I'm going to give it some thought. I'm going to pray over this. I'm going to really give it some effort. And then I'm going to try to direct my kid as best as possible as they get to the age where they can make decisions for themselves and point them in the right direction. And then I'm going to pray and let God work this out. I'm going to coach them. I'm going to counsel them. I'm going to do all the things I need to do. But let's start here. Let's start here with this. All right. Let me pray for you, and then I'll dismiss you to your groups. God, give us wisdom. You say that you'll give it. You say that you'll give it abundantly when we ask for it in the midst of our trials, in the midst of our difficulty, when we don't know exactly what to do, God. And you do not specify the exact things that we are to do in every situation. And for each and every person here, God, we need your wisdom. We need you to direct us and guide us, but we need it to be according to your word. We need to think with a biblical mindset, with clear scriptural passages in our mind that are pointing us to biblical, good, godly wisdom that comes from above and not earthly wisdom. God, help us to not be conformed into the image of the world and this ideas that are perpetuated about what the whole point of college is. God, help us to even think about it differently for our own kids, to know that there are some necessary things that must take place, God, but that we are seeking a higher purpose, a purpose to please you, to see our kids launched as individuals who love you into this world to be on mission for you, to care about the lost, to be involved in ministry. God, we want so much more for our kids because of what you have done for us in Christ. So God, give us that perspective and help us to apply our minds to even think about these things now for your son's name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.